Hey everybody, and welcome to the 16th MyJS story. This week we're going to be talking to Adam Baldwin. Adam, do you want to say hi?
Howdy, everyone.
Now, yeah, you were saying before the show that it's been a while since we talked. I'm trying to remember exactly how long it's been since we've had you on the show.
It's probably been a couple of years, I would say. Seems like it.
I just reached out to all of our past guests and said, hey, let's talk about this. So
Cool.
Node Security Project. It was 2013, December 2013. So yeah, like 3 years.
Wow. It's been a while. That was early on. Node Security. Yeah.
Yep. Episode 89. And now we're on episode we're almost at 250. So in fact,
Cool.
I think we just recorded 251 and then I think we have 250 scheduled for next week or something.
Gotcha.
One of the nice things about being able to time shift when you release stuff.
Yeah.
Everyone will get 250 before 251, but yeah. Anyway, so I sent you a bunch of questions beforehand and we'll just work through those. I tend to ask questions and then I dig deeper on the parts that are interesting to me, and if there are any points that you want to make along the way, feel free.
Sounds great.
All right, the first question that I have is, how did you get into programming?
Oh, well, that goes a long way back. So that started when I was 8. I got into BASIC. I had a 286, the classic green screen. Of course, it came with BASIC, and there was Gorilla.baz. And I started by just teaching myself BASIC by modifying the existing program, right? Changing the simple algorithm to, or simple equations to, change the trajectory of the, projectile and things like that. So that's how I got started with programming. Yeah.
That's interesting. So,
are you trying to figure out how to stay current with Ruby and Rails? I'm putting on a 2-day online conference called Ruby Remote Conf. You can check it out at rubyremoteconf.com. Like I said, it's a 2-day conference where you can come and listen to speakers and experts from all around the world talk to you about issues pertaining to Ruby and web development. We have an online Slack channel, a roundtable discussion on Zoom, and all of the talks are given over Google Hangouts, and all of the talks will be streamed to you live. Come check us out at rubyremoteconf.com.
that's interesting. So, from the time you were 8 until now, you became this genius and started working in JavaScript. How did that happen?
Well, JavaScript, I sort of got, it was probably the late 90s when I first started dabbling with JavaScript, probably 97, 98. And that was just,
Can I interrupt with a question?
Sure.
Had you been programming all that time from when you were 8 until the 90s? Of course, I don't know how old you are, so maybe that was like 2 years. But
no, so I'm 37, so that would have been a long time ago.
Okay.
I have to figure that. Yeah, I basically graduated 97. So these are all my security questions, by the way.
Yep.
So right. Graduated 97. So I've been dabbling there. So in between, when I started, and probably that time when I got into JavaScript, I had a mentorship when I was about 15. I sort of got in trouble, with a bulletin board system, and I got some guidance from somebody who owned the bulletin board system, right? So, and they sort of guided me learning then Visual Basic, right? So I just kind of stepped up to Visual Basic, as well as learning things about reverse engineering. So getting into assembler and things like that, right? Learning how to take things apart, remove nag screens. There was nag screens back then, and copy protections and things like that. But and then sort of late 90s, getting into web stuff, basic web pages and things like that. That's where JavaScript kind of started to leak in. Basic, just really simple stuff. I can't really remember what the heck we were doing with it, but it wasn't very complex stuff, right? It was all client side.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then sort of after that, I sort of didn't really do much with JavaScript, and it was more, Perl and, C and assembler and things like that. But sort of when I got back into JavaScript, would have been really early days of Node, and yet was building products. It just got to building some products, some real time sort of products in Node and JavaScript, and I had to figure out, what the service area was. How do we secure these applications and things like that? And so that sort of brought me, screaming back into the into Node, in JavaScript. Just I had to understand that world. I had to understand what could it do, what its capabilities were, surface area, things like that. So that's what recently pulled me back into JavaScript.
Interesting. So you had done some JavaScript, back in the 90s. It's funny because, you're like, I'm 37 and I'm just like, phew, that's old. I just turned 37. So,
Nice.
Yeah, so I get kind of the time frame there. But yeah, I didn't take programming seriously until I got into it professionally, which was in 2006. And so I'm curious, yeah, was it Node.js and just the capabilities there that brought you back to JavaScript, or was it something else about the language that kind of captured your attention?
The thing I liked and the thing that I've enjoyed is the lack of context switching between the front end and the back end. Because before that, what we were doing is, we were writing HTML, CSS, JavaScript on the front end, and then it was PHP for me on the back end. And so context switching between the two was always, just a pain. And so, I could just write everything in one language. It's to me, that's huge advantage.
It's interesting. I'm going to poke at that just a little bit because I've heard that. But, I've gone in and tried to write some applications with, like an Angular front end and an Express back end, or even just use MeanStack, which is supposed to have, some pretty codified ways of doing
Sure.
things. And I found that the context switching, it was still there because the concerns on the back end are different from the concerns on the front end, and the framework on the back end is different from the framework on the front end.
You still have that context switching, but you're speaking the same dialect, right?
Okay.
Like your syntax is roughly the same. So you're not having to, there's that nuance is out of the way. And for me, that was huge, right?
Okay.
But then again, I don't write a lot of code. I read, and the team I work with, we read and dissect code, which is almost a completely different experience than writing. Things like the spread operator. The spread operator, to me, I run into that while I'm reading code, and it looks like pseudocode, and you're just like ... Yeah, this does something, right? It doesn't. You have to. It's a whole new set of states and things that we have to keep in our heads when we're reading and basically taking in JavaScript. So that's a little different perspective there. Not a lot of the code I write hits production.
I'm kind of curious, and I'm going to deviate a little bit from my questions here because you said we read a lot of code, we don't write a lot of code. And I'm kind of curious, like, what do you mean by that? Are you doing code reviews professionally for other companies, or?
Yep. Yeah. So Lift Security does code reviews. So we'll sit down and a pull request comes in. The best example of that I can give is we audit all of the code that goes through NPM. So not the modules that third parties write, but actually NPM Inc. writes. So as they ship code, new features for their website or whatever, that hits our desk. And so we're then reviewing that code, to see if there was any subtle bugs introduced that could have security impact.
I want to hear the phone call where you get on and tell Isaac you're doing it wrong.
It's happened. We haven't told Isaac that, but, they're very. That's the interesting things is part of what we have to do is take a dev team from a position where vulnerability or bugs or those things kind of create that feeling of uneasiness to being comfortable with the fact that we could have a security issue and we know the protocol in practice to sort of take care of it. So that's kind of once you start dealing with bugs, they or security issues, they sort of stop, creating that feeling of anxiety.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We recently had Kim Carter on the show, and he was talking about security. He has a book series called Holistic InfoSec for Web Developers, and what I'm wondering is how much of what you do is then actual, hey, there's this security issue in the code versus just training people to not expose things. How much of security is training your personnel to not give away your secrets versus actually writing secure code?
It kind of goes hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
The having your code reviewed by somebody, whether that's a peer, whether that's a third party vendor or whatever, that feedback, right? That feedback loop, you're going to get that. You're going to get that feedback, and hopefully you can, adapt that into your thinking. So, what I always try to get across to developers is as you're writing a piece of code, right? Like you're not going to know that you're doing something wrong until somebody points it out. And then when somebody points it out, you're going to have to, with your discipline, you're going to have to work to make that, it's got to feel wrong, right? Your spidey sense should kind of tingle when you come across this certain pattern. And then you have to actively do something about it, or, put that reminder to do something about it. So it's just a feedback cycle, I think.
Right. That makes sense. So I'm going to loop us back around now. And I think, you've kind of talked about it a little bit, where you're doing code reviews essentially for NPM Inc. and making that system secure, which affects the security for pretty much the entire JavaScript ecosystem.
Yeah.
But, what besides that, are there other contributions that you've made to the JavaScript community that people would recognize, or is it mostly around the Node Security Project and NPM Inc.?
Yeah. So the few that I've contributed to is, it's really been around security, right? That's what I live and breathe, every day. And so really the Node Security Project, which is now sort of going to be off and managed by the foundation. The Node Security Project is my, big contribution there. The only other one that seems to stand out is, I started a library called Helmet, which is, just a little security framework for security headers. And that's now being managed by somebody else, but or maintained, yeah.
Gotcha. So tell us a little bit more about what it's like to do these kinds of security reviews. What do you look for? Are you just looking for like a WASP top 10, or are you looking for other common things that only really show up in Node projects, or is there more to it than that?
It's kind of both of those. I'll give you my generic version, because the OWASP top 10 are definitely, those are the top 10 for a reason, right? They're the most impactful and most common vulnerabilities that affect web applications or applications. Obviously, we build other things with Node, or JavaScript than just web applications, but that's a common case. So the OWASP top 10 for sure. But my personal way of, looking for vulnerabilities is, I look for where data comes into the system, right? That could be files, that could be requests, that could be any number of ways. I look for the things that I have control over. And then I look for where those end up, right? What systems does that piece of data flow through, and how does it get, transformed? How does it get modified? How does it get manipulated? What logic does that affect, right? So how does that data flow through the system, and then where does it end up? So does it end up in a database? Does it end up in a file? Does it end up, going to another system, or, and what is that behavior, and what's that impact, right? And so you're looking at, does it affect confidentiality, integrity, availability, those different sort of like that triad of security principles there. And what control and what do I have, and what assumptions are the developers making, right? Are they checking that input? Are they They might be sanitizing it on the way in, but not on the way out. And so really that's my methodology. And then it just, it's a big matrix from there of things to check. And the thing with a good penetration tester or a good security auditor is that they don't really need to know, those specific technologies, those specific attacks. Knowing those things makes them efficient. So if I, go in and I start auditing a .NET application, right? Like I'm not good at that. I'm not very adept at it, but I know the different patterns that are going to show up in a typical attack or what could make for a vulnerability. And so then I can combine that and start looking for issues that may be specific to .NET or do that research. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, I did QA before I was a full-time developer. Cool. And, I wasn't like doing full-on penetration tests or anything like that. But, yeah, I mean, it was the same kind of thing, right? I know that SQL injection is kind of a bad thing on a web app. And so when I was testing, one of the things I would do is I would put in, the semi-standard blah, 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 blah drop tables.
Yep.
And, and try and break my way out of it. And usually I had 2 or 3 different strings that I would try in each text field just to give it a shot and see what would happen. And, they were writing the apps in Ruby on Rails, and Rails made it easy for you to avoid those kinds of issues.
Yep.
But at the same time, if they ever took a shortcut, I'd catch it. And, so understanding those definitely makes sense. But yeah, at the same time, I'd hear about some other type of exploit. And so, yeah, I would just apply the pattern. I didn't have to deeply understand how or why that worked. It was just, okay, run this against the application. And yeah, it works. And how hackers are thinking about these things. And so what vectors they're probably going to try and exploit, or at least exploit first.
Yep. I mean, that's the standard pattern. You have a few of those strings, you start there. Again, if something falls out, all of a sudden the app 500s throws an error message, you might have something. And then you revisit that and go deeper.
Yeah, and usually we were or doing these tests against systems. The test systems, so we had full access to the system. So if it dropped the table, I could go look and I'd know.
Yep.
But yeah, most of the time, they just do it the standard way and it wasn't an issue, but you just, you never know. So do you, at this point, do you have a script that you follow for a lot of this stuff? So for the common exploits, you just, okay, here's the pile of scripts for these, and then we'll look at some of the other less common things, or how do you structure that?
Yeah, you sort of start with, we tend to, the common tools that we're using for a typical web application is like burp proxy and a web browser, right? So we do have some automation, but really that automation is there to shake out the common things, and then, sort of like throw off those alarm bells again. If the scanner, runs against an application and it doesn't find a finding on a particular route, but maybe it set off a bunch of 500 errors, I'm going to look at what those requests are, and I'm going to see if I can, maybe massage them into being something that's, exploitable, right? Yeah. That's, so it's just a combination, but the power comes in all developers want automation for this stuff, right? They want automated testing, they want automated security testing, and they want automated scanning. And that goes so far. We even, we do as much automation as we can. But at the end of the day, right, like if you're just protecting against automation then. And so if your actual adversaries are humans that are, thinking and trying to think of creative ways into your application. And so we have to do that. And so you can't get away from, you can't just fully automate those things, but, and get good, deep coverage.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I mean, they're going to know that your slip up may not be a standard thing. And so, yeah, they may just try something completely off the wall in the hopes that, something sticks or they get some hint. And that may be all they need.
Yep. Yeah, and little things like error messages. It's easy to think, well, yeah, an info leak from an error message is not that big a deal. But those little things are what add up that are useful for an attacker, right? Like a path or some other component, or just like a stack trace. It becomes useful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the next question is, what are you working on now? And I'm assuming that it's a lot along these same lines. Is there anything you want to add to this as far as things that you're working on?
Yeah, well, the thing is that we're sort of to the point of we've kind of been focused on the dependency tree, right? Like that's what we've been focused on. Like we have this giant dependency tree from like Node applications, right? That we're consuming, and I'm still kind of pushing on that a little bit in terms of looking for vulnerabilities, but we're really trying to do that at scale. An interesting project that I've been working on recently was doing sort of like behavioral analysis of all of the modules that get published that have install scripts. Because this last year, that was that big sort of uproar about install scripts and the potential for a worm, and that sort of like, caused this big stir of okay, NPM's insecure, and then Yarn came out and disabled install scripts, and then they ultimately turned them on again because things are broken if you don't have them for some modules. And that whole controversy got me thinking. I was like, how can we detect on publish or very soon after? Can we detect if a module has intended maliciousness, right? And this is the malware problem of Node, right? Like, malware authors haven't solved this.
Right.
It's kind of a cat and mouse game. But I thought, okay, because we've seen modules that open up reverse shells, when they get installed, and we've seen those kind of things. And so I was like, and we've seen like the rim refalls that RMRF / right. And so I wanted to see if we could detect some of that behavior, and that's what I've been working on recently. Over the new year, I published 140 advisories that were showing modules that downloaded that weren't actively insecure, like actively like trying to be malicious, but they were downloading content over insecure protocol. They were downloading things over HTTP and then using them for compilation or execution or things like that. So you could man in the middle of those connections and get code execution on a developer system, as an example.
That's really interesting.
Kind of
And the thing that you're talking about here, I mean, if there is one thing that people complain about that they don't understand and that is obscure from programmers, it's those dependencies. I mean, they go and they install the top level module that they need, but all the stuff that it brings in to do what it does, I mean, nobody looks at that. Or if they do, then they complain, well, there's all this stuff here that I don't understand.
Yeah. That's the other challenge we have, is that we don't have a registry of things that we have audited, right? Like that info isn't out there. So getting intel to developers or security teams that are vetting modules is sort of the next level of getting that sort of intel out there, so that they can easily search through the behavioral sort of model of these different modules, either on install or on run. I'm focusing on the ones that are on install because those are the interesting ones to me. But
yeah. Cool. Anything else you're working on that you want to talk about, or?
Well, sort of that, like, that's like the project, right? Like that's the kind of like the technical fun stuff. And on the other hand, sort of getting and just kind of plugging the mantra of security being sort of a journey, not a destination. The analogy I use is there's an optical illusion called the Penrose stairs, and you're sort of like, you'll never reach the top. It's those stairs that just kind of keep winding up and up. It's just Escher-esque sort of drawing. And that's the kind of my mantra for security, right? The continuous security. It's that you're always sort of taking that step up, taking that step forward. And as you climb stairs, right? Like we all love to climb stairs, and when you get to the top, you're kind of tired, right? Well, as you mature, each step up and each step forward gets a little bit more difficult, right? And it's something we have to keep doing. You will never be, you'll never reach that 100% secure mark. You never reach the top, and it's something to sort of just adapt into our lives, into the way we develop, into our discipline, way we deploy things, the way we talk about things, the way we invest in, our developers and our education, things like that. It's just that sort of process, that continuously always up and forward.
Yep. Yeah, it makes sense. So do you have a name for the project that you've been working on to find these dependency or install issues?
No, it's just sort of been internally it's Maleficent is the code name, but I'm a huge Disney fan, so there's my other security question if you're keeping track.
It's funny you say that, because if you ask my wife who her favorite Disney character is, not Disney villain, Disney character, it's Maleficent.
Oh, interesting.
So,
well, that's a good choice.
Yeah.
So that's kind of just been the internal code name, but I don't know. The challenge is figuring out how to get that information into the hands of, say, developers and have that be useful for something. It's probably more useful to say like a security team that's vetting modules or something,
right.
But we'll see where that shows up. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, those are all the questions except for picks. You ready to shout out about some stuff?
Sure, we'll come up with something.
Are you looking to expand your skills in mobile development? Have an idea for the next Angry Birds app? Then you need to check out iOS Remote Conf, produced by the same team that brings you your favorite DevChat.tv podcasts like Ruby Rogues and iFreaks. Join us for 2 days of jam-packed fun and learning streamed to you live May 17th and 18th. Go check it out at iosremoteconf.com.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, those are all the questions except for picks. You ready to shout out about some stuff?
Sure, we'll come up with something.
All right. Well, you've been on the show, so you know what picks are. I generally tell people it's stuff that, at least recently has made your life better. So it could be a TV show or it could be a code tool. Yeah. What do you want to shout out about?
Oh man, let's see. Let's start. Let's encrypt, right? Let's encrypt.com.
Oh, good one.
I think that's, given our need for encryption and need for that, get there's no reason not to have SSL certs on everything. So yeah, Let's Encrypt is a good one.
Yep.
I don't know. I think I already plugged him earlier, but NPM and this isn't really this is more of a thanking them for their hard work, right? Like we always can easily complain about how slow something is or how doesn't have a feature we want, but I tell you, working on the inside with that team, they do a lot of hard work for everything we do. So for everything that we want, all the features we want and things like that. So we'd be in a world of hurt without that registry.
Yep. And just to shout out, in addition to that, we did interview, we've had Isaac on the show a few times, but I did a MyJS story with Isaac about, I think it was like 8 or 9 episodes ago.
Nice.
My JS story. And then the other one that I'll point out is we also had Rebecca Turner from NPM come on and talk. So
cool.
So yeah, definitely cool stuff going on over there. And then of course we've had them on the show for regular panel episodes as well.
Nice. Yeah, I can't think of anything else. Shamelessly plugged, but
those are great. I'm gonna go ahead and shout out about a few things as well. The first one is and I'm not actually using this as part of my podcast setup today, but I have a Zoom H6, which is just a digital audio recorder. So you put an SD card in it, and it does a bunch of recording. The Zoom is really nice for things like if you're recording multiple microphones into the same setup. It kind of works that way. It has 4 inputs, and then it also has like an onboard microphone that you can switch out depending on what kind of recording pattern you want, which is really nice. It also has equalizers and volume knobs for all of the different inputs. So I use the Zoom H6 for podcasting with my kids. My son and I, as we speak, this Friday, we're going to be setting up the website and doing the research for a podcast about video games. And then we're just going to be doing that at an 11-year-old's level, but we'll be doing a podcast about video games. And so we'll probably play a video game for a month and talk about it on the podcast. And then we'll pick a different game and do the same thing. But anyway, so what I can do is I can plug that into the wall. It provides phantom power to the podcast mics, which are Shure SM58 microphones. Those are about $100 microphones. They're decent microphones. That's not what I'm talking into right now, but it's portable and they take a beating a little bit better than my main podcasting mic. So I can cart them around and fly to New York with them, which I've done, and things like that. So, in fact, if you listen to any of the Microsoft Connect episodes, they were done not with the Shure SM58s, but with the Zoom H6 microphone. And it was all, like all the cords were zip tied to chairs and tables and stuff.
Nice.
But then we had the over-the-ear microphones that were really nice. But anyway, so, and I did bring the Shure SM58 microphones just in case we needed them. And they traveled really well, no damage done. Even though they were in my suitcase that got checked as luggage and all that stuff, so it was fine. But yeah, I really like it as far as it's almost like a portable studio that you can take with you, and it just comes in a little hard case and travels real well. So I'm going to pick that. And then another thing I'm going to pick is a security podcast that I have enjoyed off and on over the years. I got overloaded on my podcast listening, so I unsubscribed, but I'll probably resubscribe sometime soon. And that's Security Now with Steve Gibson.
Oh yeah.
That's
a good one.
It's interesting to me too, because a lot of the things that he talks about aren't things that I necessarily worry about in my day-to-day life. This exploit on Windows, or this
Right.
particular web security bug, or this API is not secure, not encrypted properly. But it really does give you the idea, hey, look, these things are being discovered, they're being published, and hey, look, this is the way people think about getting past the security on these systems. And so it's kind of an interesting education that way. They are a little bit long, but they're pretty darn awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Adam, if people want to find out what you're doing, read blog posts, check out tweets, anything like that, look at code on GitHub, where do they go?
Oh, let's see. It's github.com/evilpacket. If they want to find me on Twitter, it's
Evil Packet?
Evil Packet.
That's awesome.
That would be my handle. I don't use it very much anymore, but yeah. And then it's Adam_Baldwin on Twitter. If you go to Adam Baldwin on Twitter, you'll find the actor and you'll be disappointed. You want the malicious actor. You want Adam_Baldwin.
Gotcha. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the actor. I'm the malicious actor.
Yeah. Firefly. Good stuff.
Right. Oh, now I'm sad.
I know. Sorry. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. Thanks for coming, Adam.
All right. Thank you.
I should have picked Firefly. Anyway, we'll wrap this one up and we'll catch y'all next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.